Hello everyone! This is my reaction to this video. While terrorism affects dozens of people around the world each year, corruption impacts billions. Honestly, corruption saps economic growth, hinders development, destabilizes governments, undermines democracy, and provides openings for dangerous groups such as criminals, traffickers, and terrorists. In Africa, it is a delight and joy to know and acknowledge that Rwanda has really done her level best to defeat corruption in Rwanda. The President Paul Kagame must be doing great. Botswana, too, has managed to tackle corruption despite being a single-party monopolizing government. Transparency International ranked Botswana to be Africa's least corrupt country. This video is dead on point. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. It does start a conversation. Please take a listen to the son of Africa, Professor Lumumba.
Corruption has been defined differently. Some say that it is the use of public office for private benefit. But a friend of mine, Boima Fanbule in Liberia, once told me that corruption is a nice name for theft. And he said, let us just call it what it is. It is theft on an industrial scale by people who have been given the honor and privilege of occupying public office. That is what corruption is. And it is a monster which has and continues to ravage the whole world. We know of corrupt regimes in Europe. Italy at one time in Europe used to be infamous for her corrupt leaders and her corruption and the mafia, and I'm not saying that they have disappeared. So that corruption is known to all civilizations. Europe was like that. If you go to the United States of America, there was a time when you had corruption on an industrial scale. And we know that that was something that happened in the 1990s, in the 60s, and continues today. Latin America, we have seen kleptocratic regimes. In the Caribbean, we have seen kleptocratic regimes. In Asia, we have seen corrupt regimes. And I was just thinking about America, and I had forgotten to mention about Alphonse Capone, who was one of the greatest purveyors of corruption and a corrupter of government officials. But I was talking about Asia. If you go to Asia, you'll find very many regimes of that. And in Africa, we tend to talk too much about Africa as if Africa is the home of corruption. Now, what you see in Africa in terms of corruption is not grand corruption. Grand corruption exists elsewhere. It is much more visible and possibly much more painful in Africa because its impact is so very evident in all sectors, whether it is in agriculture, whether it is in infrastructure of the public, for public benefit, whether it is in the health sector, in all sectors. That is why the corruption in Africa and Asia particularly is more debilitating and therefore much more publicized. And it's a dangerous thing. The international community, of course, has many times come out and spoken and declared itself on corruption. The UN Convention Against Corruption, the African Charter Against Corruption, and domestically people have enacted laws in Africa. But let me tell you, like my friend Okonjo-Iweala, who is now the head of the WTO and used to be a minister in the Nigerian government, fighting corruption is a dangerous thing. It is a dangerous thing because the politicians don't want corruption to be fought. They speak against it at public fora, but let me tell you, they don't mean what they are saying. I had the honor and privilege of serving as director of an anti-corruption body in Kenya. And I remember many meetings that I held with senior government officials. And I can tell you they were not interested. Not those in government, not those in opposition. I remember at one time during the administration of President Kibaki, I sought and obtained audience with him. And I indicated to President Kibaki that we were going investigations, and almost 10 members of his cabinet were under investigation. And I named them privately, and I still will not name them publicly because of Official Secrets Act. And he told me, Kazi, fanywe tu, let the work be done. And I told the president at that time that what we want is for Parliament to grant the anti-corruption body the power to prosecute without going through the office of the Attorney General at that time. And I told the president the reason why I'm asking that the law be amended in this regard was because whenever we send files to the Attorney General, he sends them back to us, ordering us to investigate things that have been investigated. Of course, we tried what we could. I remember attending a meeting chaired by the then Prime Minister when the law was being changed, and I made certain suggestions, and I remember members sitting there retorted, "Do you want us to make laws for angels?" What I'm saying, therefore, is the politicians, not one of them, if there is one, I'm struggling to remember, who actually wants corruption to be fought. And when you go out to fight corruption, they'll fight you. They'll try to create things against you. And I've seen it across the continent of Africa. I saw it with Nuhu Ribadu in Nigeria. I saw it with McCarthy in South Africa. They even disbanded the organization. I've seen it recently in Malawi with the lady who is in charge of anti-corruption, Martha. They don't want you. They try actually to get things so that you yourself can be charged and arrested for corruption. They can amend laws in order to abolish your office. They amended laws in Kenya when on the occasion of the change of the constitution, they amended law to abolish the offices that we occupied. And I remember, I'm writing my book and it shall come out, those who sat at a room in Kisumu and said, he must be removed. If he's not removed, all of us are going to be in jail. You go and read the Hansard at midnight on the day that they were changing the law to abolish your offices. And yet, at public rallies, in their political manifestos, they claim that they want corruption to be fought. They are not interested. And I want you to look at any one of them. When I was the director of the Anti-Corruption Authority, I wrote to the then Speaker of the National Assembly asking that I want all the wealth declarations of all members of Parliament. He refused to give them to me, because I wanted at that time to say, let us have an amnesty so that the thieves can come and they surrender some of their wealth, because prosecution is very difficult, and even the institution that we go to prosecute these cases are themselves, some of them, susceptible to manipulation. Not easy. And the other thing that we forget is that the social acceptance of corruption in Kenya, like most African countries, is also very high. We tolerate and love the corrupt. I remember at one time, we had caused several cabinet ministers to be arrested. One of them, actually, when we said we wanted to arrest him, said that the director of the Anti-Corruption Commission should go to his office. Can you believe it? Of course, we refused, and he came to our office, and you know what he told me? You take me to court very quickly, I'll be acquitted. And you know he was? He was. And I remember some of them whom we caused to be arrested, and as they were coming to the Integrity Center, they had crowds coming to them and saying that we should be killed. And they are saying they are thieves, but our thieves. That is the level of acceptance of corruption in this country. We know individuals who are thieves. They have run down public institutions. And yet on the voting day, they are elected When they go to churches, they are given front seats and allowed to use the pulpit to talk. When the pastors, some of them see them entering the church, they stop the sermon and hold special prayers for them. Of course, prayers should be said for them, but not the kind of prayer that they are given or that is prayed for them. Social acceptance at all levels until the day that we morally rearm. We are not in a good space. And I tell you, in this country, one of the most dangerous things to be in Kenya is to be honest. If you are honest, the system works against you. The system can be manipulated against you. And that is why we continue to punch below our weight. Because as I've said elsewhere, and I repeat it here, we have allowed hyenas to take care of goats. And what they do is that they eat those goats. Hyenas will never change their hyenahood. They can only become bad hyenas. Corruption is a cancer. And those of us who choose to speak about and against it, it is dangerous business. Have there been leaders in Africa who have dealt a blow to corruption, reduce it to a level where it is the exception rather than the rule? Yes. Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere in Tanzania. John Joseph Pombe Magufuli also in Tanzania. Kwame Nkrumah in his first years in Ghana. Kenneth David Kaunda, Sansiretse Kama, and of course, Paul Kagame in Rwanda. Sasiwur Ramgulam in Mauritius. It can be done, but it requires men and women who are resolute. Recently, I saw the president of Tanzania, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, order people out of office, and she meant it. You must mean it. It's not for scoring political points until we forget. It must be sustained. Outside of Africa, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore became a testament to how corruption is to be fought. And he fought it successfully. And you can see what Singapore, a little island that boasts very little, what it does. It can be done. Because 90% of people actually want to do the right thing. They are only victims of corruption. That's why they are quick to pay the traffic police. That's why they are quick to give somebody who is processing their passport. That is why they are quick to pay their village headman. That is why, because they are victims, because we have normalized corruption, we have normalized the absurd. We have changed our creed. Our creed is greed. It can be done. The shortest avenue to ending corruption must come from the top. If we see cabinet ministers who are thieves, governors who are thieves, being arrested and their property being confiscated, and we write here, this property once belonged to so and so, who was a thief, it is now a public library. The world will know that once you are a thief, we'll never forget. We buy you from holding public office. You must, the fight against corruption must be vicious. That's why education is very important. It must be vicious. People must suffer pain. If they don't suffer pain, then they will continue to participate in it, and they'll do all that there is to deal with the few that are not participating in it, and they will try to recruit them. You know, corruption is systemic. It is both systemic and coherent in the manner in which it operates. The political class and the bureaucrats create a system which only works on the basis of corruption. Systems can be created and they can be made to work. You go to Rwanda now, if you want a passport, you'll get it. You don't pay a dime. You go to Rwanda, drive on the streets, you'll not pay a dime. You go to Rwanda and have done it. You can cause a company to be incorporated within 1 hour. It can be done. During John Joseph Pombe Magufuli's presidency in Tanzania, only recently, I'm giving you a more recent example, things can be done, systems can be cleaned up, and we know that there are places where things can be cleaned up. It is just a question of sustained political action, and you re-educate the people and make corruption expensive and painful. Then it can be done. It's not something that has not been done. It's something that can be done and has to be done. And if it is not done, then our country, we are going to be doomed. And corruption is very expensive because there is informal taxation. And this informal taxation only oils the pockets of individuals who continue, therefore, to be parasitic upon the society. But leadership must be resolute. They say in Kiswahili, fish rots from the head. Once you are a leader and you tell the people that this is the direction to follow, the people invariably, 9 out of 10 people want to do the right thing. They don't want trouble with the law. But there is a small percentage in Africa, not more than 1%, these thieves, and most of them happen to be in the political class. Our political class and our politics attracts our worst people, somehow. And that is why we pay for it. We pay for the sins and the greed of only a few people. Young people represent both the present and the future. And the way you train young people, the way you inculcate a sense of moral and civic responsibility is what defines who they are. Do they believe in their country? If they are Kenyans, if they are Tanzanians, if they are African, do they have self-esteem? Young people must be made to have self-esteem. They must love themselves, respect themselves. Do they adore material things? Because the adoration of material things is what makes people to participate in corruption. Do they believe in intergenerational responsibility? In other words, do they believe that they are only in this world for a short time and they will sooner leave this world and go to the next? Do they know that material things, the consumption of material things is like taking salty water? The more you drink, the more you want. Have they read the story of Alexander the Great, who at age 36 or 33 had conquered the entire world, and on the day that he died, asked that his casket be made so that he could have his hands outstretched, so that his casket could be carried by his physicians to tell the world that even when you are a great man and you are about to die, the greatest physicians will never stop death, and that in the world you came with empty hands and empty-handed you leave, so that they know having material things does not take you anywhere, that happiness comes from within, as Mahatma Gandhi used to say, not from without. That is the kind of young man that I want. That young man must liberate himself and herself from attachment to material things. They must know that money is only an enabler, not a god to be worshipped. So that if you have such young men, they will not be betting on European football and betting so that they may win lottery. The divine instruction was, go ye and eat by the sweat of thy brow, not by betting and playing abracadabra. That is the young men and women that we need, not only in Africa, but in the whole world. Because as Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe said in 1960, there is only one race in the world, the human race. And as Martin Luther King Jr. said, we are neighbors in this world, much more because of technology, but are we brothers and sisters? Because beyond neighborhood, we must become brothers and sisters, because it is only in that way that I know that participating in corruption harms you Why should I have 10 cars to do what with? Why should I have watches of gold? Why should I have a bed of gold and I need sleeping tablets to sleep? Why should I have all these things that we want to use in order to impress the world? And yet I cannot sleep, yet I do not have caviar and I have no appetite. These are the questions that the young people must ask. Europe and America are perhaps the most corrupt, but the smartest in the world of corruption. Most of the corrupt money or money out of corruption is kept in Switzerland. And ironically and paradoxically, when Transparency International is doing its indices on the least corrupt, Switzerland comes number one as the least corrupt. But the last time I checked, a handler of stolen goods is guiltier than the person who stole the goods because he is an enabler. So Switzerland is a beneficiary of corruption. That is smart corruption. All the tax havens, Cayman Islands, Guernsey, these are the home of corruption. African countries don't, African corrupt people, African thieves, even presidents don't have faith in the countries that they are governed, so they keep money in those places. So corruption in Europe has evolved and it's become a little smarter, and for that reason they claim that they are not corrupt, but they are the ones who give a veneer of legality, and they're the ones who give refuge, if you may, to money that has been stolen, not only in Africa but in different parts of the world. So they are the most corrupt. The corruption in Africa is more crude. This is the problem. The corruption in Africa is very crude. You see it in your face. This is why it is much more painful. And it is painful because our systems don't even work. In Europe and America over the years, they have succeeded in using the money that they stole from us during slavery and colonization to make systems work. So that their public systems work, their travel systems work, their education system work, their health systems work largely. But in Africa, you have individuals who are taking food out of the mouths of people who are causing death by taking things from the health sector, from agricultural sector. In the United States of America, in order to give a veneer of legality to corruption, people who are midwives and enablers of corruption are called lobbyists. They call them lobbyists. These are the fellows you give money, but they are just corrupt. So one is saying that corruption is known to all humanity. But the reason why we find it greatly painful in Africa is you find a head of state or a cabinet minister taking money from a poor population and a poor country and keeping it in the Panamas or in all these countries, while even the monies that you see African countries borrow, the presidents, most of them actually have that money. At one time, it is said that President Mobutu Sese Seko of what was then Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, had more money than his own country. And the irony, of course, is that he had stolen it from the country. So, never be impressed by the idea Africa is more corrupt. Corruption in Africa is just more crude and more painful and more hurtful because it denies us of very basic requirements. Corruption will never be totally eliminated. In the nature of human beings is that we'll always engage in some kind of shortcut, but corruption can be reduced to a very minimal level so that it is the exception rather than the rule. And that is what we are anchoring upon. We must reduce corruption so that it is the exception other than the rule. As it is now, corruption is the rule. Honesty is the exception. Can it be done? Yes, it can be done. Has it been done? Yes, it has been done. And I've already given you examples of countries where it has been done in our lifetime. It can be done so that when you want a passport, you'll get it. If they say it is in 3 days, you get it in 3 days. If you want a driving license, you'll do. If you want an immigration document, you'll get it. It can be done. And let me tell you, and I want to give personal example, which I seldom give, but I want to give. Whenever I've served in public office, one of the things that I tell people, you write me a letter. Within 1 day, maximum, I'll have responded to your letter. Whether I'm taking action or not is a different debate, but I will try to do that. And let me tell you, when you lead from the front, people actually follow the leader. I remember every office that I've had the honor and privilege of serving, the reporting time is normally 8 to 5. I report to office at 6. People are in office by 7. You don't need to impose anything. People just know, I'm in office by 6. And I leave office if it is necessary at one time, even at midnight. You don't need to tell people. They just see what you are doing and they'll do the right thing. That is the natural inclination of most people to do the right thing. There may be a few people who are errants and therefore will be the aberration rather than the rule. But people are like that. Leadership by example. In fact, service by example. And I know in Kenya recently, I've been in the business, I've been writing letters since 1982 as a part of my civic responsibility. In this administration, I've written letters to governors, to the president, to everybody. Only one cabinet minister, the minister for the time being, or the cabinet secretary for the time being in charge of education, Mr. Ezekiel Mashagu, has returned my call and even caused his secretary to ring me for a meeting in his office. Exception to the rule. You may have his own other problem, but that is what leadership is all about. Showing concern, showing that you actually are on top of the affairs of whatever system that you are enjoined to do. I write to presidents outside of this country on different things and they respond. Hakainde Hichilema responds, Chakwera responds, Samia Suluhu Hassan responds, Paul Kagame responds, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni responds. But in my own country, they don't respond. So these things can be done, and it is leadership by example. Because people want very basic things. People simply want food on the table with dignity, school for their children. When they are sick, they want health services. When they want to travel, they want good travel. When their children have graduated from school, they want opportunities. They want reasonably good housing. They don't want cars. They don't want television. They want just reasonably good clothing, reasonably good shoes. These are and peace and security. This is all they want. And if you give them that, or create a system that gives them that, even if you paid yourself $1 million bob, they will not mind. They want decent salaries, work environment where they are treated with dignity and honor like human beings. They are not insulted. They want to be judged not by their ethnic extraction or by the color of their skin. They want to be judged by the content of their character and what they can do. As Deng Xiaoping used to say, if you want the rat or the mouse to be caught, you don't care whether the cat is black and white. You just want a cat that catches the damn thing. And that is what the people want. Easier said than done. Others have done it. I've seen when there is a leadership in any country, that country thrives. During our own lifetime, we have seen Dubai rise from a desert like the phoenix and become the Mecca of almost every other person in the world. Leadership can be done, and it must be done. And who are to do it? You and me. Will it happen during our lifetime? If it does, well and good. Must it happen during our lifetime? No, it mustn't. It mustn't. It is an intergenerational relay race. You run your leg, and the other person runs his or her leg. And lo and behold, it will be well with us. In this country, to me in Kenya, at one time there was a good friend of mine called Joseph Kaguthi, and was given the task of dealing with drugs. And he tried. There was another friend of mine called John Mututho, who was given the task to do so. He tried. But when you try in this country, unfortunately, when you are working too hard and working well, they remove you. This is the tragedy of this country. So we should do it. At one time, we even tried to regulate betting. Let's regulate it. Right now, I go to rural Kenya. Young people in rural Kenya, deep in rural Kenya, they know the players of the smallest English and Spanish teams. They think that one day they will win the lottery. And those who organize these betting things are very clever. They make you win 1,000, 20,000. So your appetite is always kept. Young people are betting their school fees, betting everything that they have. Regulation. Once you do that, it can be done. All these things can be done. But where does it fall? Leadership. When my friend and former teacher, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, was the governor of Makueni, he did things within a short time, within 10 years, and they are testimonies, they are monuments in this environment. Can be done. And I'm not just talking about Kenya. In Africa, things are happening in a number of countries. I was just a few days ago, on the 29th of May, the year 2023, I attended the inauguration of the newly elected governor of Akwa Ibom State in Nigeria, Umo Eno. And I was amazed. I've traveled across Africa. I've not seen streets like in Uyo, in Akwa Ibom. The best streets I've seen. And I told the governor-elect at that time, the governor then, why do Africans go to benchmark in Singapore about how to do road? They should come to Akwa Ibom State. It is being done. It has been done. Go to Botswana, Haberane. See what is being done there. Go to Tanzania, go to Dar es Salaam, go to Kigali. It can be done. Even in this country, there are things that we have done well. Whenever we decided to be serious, we did certain things well. We did Thika Road, did we not? We are the largest generator of electricity through geothermal. We did well. In this country, we are the best in hospitality. Travel across Africa, human resource in Kenya, the best. It can be done. The only problem is the quality of politicians that we have. The day we change, either we change them physically or we cause them to change their mind, that is the day we'll know a quantum leap in education, economically, in agriculture, and all. You know, when I look at the shortages we experience about food in the continent of Africa, or power, we have the resources to do it, but we have chosen not to do it. Chinua Achebe, that great writer from Nigeria who wrote as his magnum opus, his greatest book was Things Fall Apart, but people have not read his Anthills of the Savannah, in which Chinua says he does not know from what inexhaustible wells of patience the poor man in Africa draws. He is constantly abused by politicians and he or she does not react. He goes to a public rally and he is sitting under the hot sun. He or she is sitting under the hot sun. But the so-called leaders are sitting in air-conditioned places watching from afar, and then they harass them on the roads with their never-ending motorcades. And after they have finished, then they have a choice of the best food in the world, and we do not get angry. Africans must get angry. And once they are angry, that anger must be canalized and must be converted into something positive. It must be expressed at the ballot box so that we use it to consign these thieves where they belong. It's not going to be easy because they are going to resist. But we must try. You can't say the door is locked unless you pushed it to determine whether it's locked or not. Let's push the door. It must be repeated times without number that human human society is dynamic, and the dynamism demands that we as human beings, as citizens of our different countries, citizens of the continent of Africa, and citizens of the world, must always do that which is in our best interest to ensure that the quality of our lives are retained at a certain acceptable level and improved if they have not been improved. It depends on us. They say in Kiswahili, ukitaka vya uvunguni sharti uiname. If you want anything under the bed, you must bend. I am asking all of us, there is something that we need which is hidden metaphorically under our beds. Let us bend. And if we all bend and remove that thing and use it to good effect, we will know goodness during this temporal life on earth. Mwalimu Nyerere used to say it better than